If it didn't want to give Israel that military aid, the Congress certainly would want to. I'm glad that they're getting the aid. And I know you, being a devout anti-Semite, don't feel that way. But that's okay, pal. You may get back under your rock. There he goes. And he's gone. That Herman himself said him 2 weeks ago when I was on in the morning, and he claims he quit.
No, if you go back to his statements, he said publicly at the time that he was forced out of the administration. I want to tell you categorically, he was. No question about it.
Okay, so you say he's fired.
Right. Secondly, let's take Joel Harnett. Joel Harnett is one of the 28. He ran for mayor. He lost. Why should he like me? Bella Absu. She ran for mayor. She was the leading candidate. Don't you remember that everybody thought that she would win? I beat her. Now, those are three people who ran against me, or I against them, and I defeated them. They are mad. Okay? Very reasonable. Bernie Rome. I beat him. Okay. At least I used to like him. He gets a little vicious, and sometimes I get a little upset about that. But there is a guy who wanted to be mayor. When he lost, the only reason that he thought he lost was prejudice. That's what he would tell you. That somehow or other, because he was Puerto Rican, that he lost. Isn't it possible that people voted for me because they thought I'd do a better job? No. Not if you listen to her. So I'm simply saying that as mad as I sometimes treat him, sort of preferentially. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I know.
If I were to say about Herman, as he said about me, Herman said, I'm worse than Adolf Hitler. He said that to a reporter. It was printed. Now, nobody denounced him in the editorials of this city. Supposing I had said that about him, I'd be denounced in every paper. I mean, Herman may dislike me, may not agree with my policies, but do you think that he should, with impunity, say that I'm worse than Adolf Hitler, which is what he said? Well, Charlie Rangel. Charlie Rangel said that and I'm quoting him now, I was guilty of genocide.
Yeah.
Supposing I had said that about Charlie Rangel in some other racist way, which I would never do, because that statement on his part is racist.
Mm-hmm.
It's intended to create passions and to raise passions against me. Do you understand that? If I had that, I'd have been denounced in every paper in the city.
Are you doing?
Exactly stuff. That's exactly stuff. Now, for example, Charlie Rangel was on television this past Sunday, and a reporter, the gay pressman, said to him, do you maintain that the mayor is a racist? Or something like that.
Yeah.
And Rangel said, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying he uses the methods of a racist. I'm paraphrasing now. It's just despicable. He is, and I'm again paraphrasing Rangel, he is appealing to the prejudices of the whites in this city, and that's why he's popular. That's what Rangel said. Now, the polls show that about 60% of the people in the city, and that includes across the board, whites, blacks, Hispanics, that about 60% think I'm doing good and very good, which is extraordinarily high in any period of time, particularly when you're in retrenchment. In effect, what he's saying is that the people in the city overwhelmingly are racist. That is what he's saying when he says, I am appealing to their base passions and the worst things in them. Not at all. I am doing what has to be done. I'm saying that when he says something like that, he does this city a great disservice. He does me a great disservice.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to tell you that Mayor Ed Koch, do I become sure gambling. What's that supposed to mean, Mr. Bernard? That I want prohibition? I don't understand, Mr. Bernard. You're not really being very articulate. Take the point. For the courtesy of the Yuba Matsutika family, ladies and gentlemen, that was Paul Needlenose Manaj. Udi Ashpara.
I thought it was the most amusing thing until
No, but
they told me.
Wait a minute, please, hold it. You're making me nervous.
No, I don't mean
All right, All right, just relax.
just-
Dialogue, please. Dialogue.
Yes,
May I humbly, I'm on my knees. May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Something else, Mr. Grant.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
There is a very important soap opera lady who's a producer of a soap opera. I think it's Dixon or Nixon or Tixon, I don't know. Quite openly to this talk show host that she does have spies and copies of hospitals and precincts. I see something on me.
Okay. I'm glad you called about something important, like seeing my picture in a barbershop window. Thank you.
All right, bye.
489-1155.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Ah, dear. 489-1155. And, the trouble is, it's the cocktail hour, ladies and gentlemen. Cocktail hour, an exclusive feature of the Bob Grant program. Be correct, sir. I am pro-capital punishment, but just to have capital punishment on the books really is not the answer, because you have too many judges who overturn capital punishment. Too many judges who play God, who thwart justice. I read the case of an individual who had been on death row for 6 years, and finally, hammering away with his lawyers, he got out of death row. What do you suppose he did after he got out of death row? Killed his wife. Thank you, sir. Who realizes that although sports may be fun and distracting and all of that, there are other things more important than guys with overactive pituitaries jumping around a basketball court. Defense, above on. It was that Barry Farber had talked about Great Britain and several other countries not doing the things that the Ayatollah Khomeini did, and Paulo Dwyer didn't seem to like that because Paulo Dwyer hates Britain and likes Khomeini, which, of course, is consistent with Paulo Dwyer. Thank you.
Well, my dislike for Rizzuto is just because he is the most obvious Yankee fan around.
Isn't that terrible? Isn't it obscene how he is such a rooter? I really don't think he should be doing the games. I really don't. Now, Bill White, as obvious, likes the Yankees, but Bill White keeps a certain sense of objectivity.
Sure, Bill White grew up in the National League, and it shows.
Yeah. But I like Phil personally, but his rooting is obnoxious. It's obscene.
Bought another center fielder as perfect example. Last year they took one from Seattle. This year they took one from San Diego. What would you feel if you were a fan in Seattle or San Diego and you got a good ball player finally in your club, and there he goes to the Yankees? Sports and turn to sports as an outlet. And the best thing to me about sports is the fact that each year a different team can win. Each year a team can come along, a Cinderella team, put together 9 unknowns, people playing above their heads, and have a great year. And that's what it was like in Pittsburgh when they won. That's what it is like in Kansas City when they beat the Yankees finally this year. In the National League, year after year, you get a new team that wins, and that's exciting. You'd love to see the faces on the fans in Houston when their team did well last year.
You make it sound as though the Yankee dominance is almost un-American.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Oh, handsome young man. We're not used to seeing people who've written books come in with pinstripe suits and four-in-hand silk ties. He's got no dirt under his fingernails. Lately, most of the authors come in with scruffy beards, scratching, itching, and I don't know what there is in this country today, but it seems though if a person writes a book, he feels he's got to look the part and become very scruffy looking. But Mr. Marshall, if you could let Yankee hater in the tri-state area, no matter how much he may hate the Yankees, his capacity for hating the Yankees cannot be as great as mine. Probably because he's just not that kind of a guy. He's more a laid-back type. And I've been known to get emotional once in a while, maybe once or twice. Substantiate what Bob Marshall is pointing out here, because you said it was during that all too brief period and all too uncharacteristic period when the Yankees were not dominating baseball. And that was only from 64, well, they won the pennant in 64, lost the World Series. It was only 1965 through about 74, 75.
Yeah, but been able to win.
You know, you really, I tell you this, pal, I don't hate you. You know why? Because one thing about me, my hatred stops short when a guy is really dumb. And you're super dumb. I mean, you really are dumb, pal. I mean, super dumb.
Can I get to the
do you realize that the Phillies went 97 years before they finally won?
Well,
As opposed to 27 championships for the Yankees and God knows how many pennants?
But, Bob, why is
it? Fact is that it is. I mean, you know, when we defeated the Nazis because we hated them, we didn't ask, why are there Nazis? We just said there are Nazis, they got to be wiped out. And the Yankees got to be wiped out. I hate them. Plus the fact, Bob Marshall's too nice a guy to say this, but I'll tell you, umpires are intimidated by the Yankees. And 99 out of 100 times, if there's a slight judgment call that could go either way, they'll go for the Yankees. It's a big flop. I hope that whole outfield, you know what I hope? That as soon as Jackson gets better, there's a fly ball out in the outfield. He, Winfield, and Mumphrey all go for it at the same time and collide.
Bob, I'll see you Fort Apache the Bronx.
Fort Apache the Bronx. He's going to get sued by Steinbrenner. You know, Steinbrenner is so... What do you think, Bob Marshall, of the fact that all Steinbrenner has to do is hiccup, cough, burp, and he's on the front page of every sports section in the city? Isn't that disgusting? Party, a couple of years ago when I had a brief sabbatical at another station. And the man is, I thought I had an ego, but I tell you, I'm Mr. Humble by comparison. This man, mod on. In the left lane just before Humboldt Street, steady or right, there's a guy there by the name of Louis Spingola, who is a cousin of Renato and Gino Spingola. And he's got a flatbed truck out there. And anyway, he's having problems. New Jersey Turnpike southbound blocked near the Lincoln Tunnel. Route 22 westbound in New Jersey is closed temporarily due to an oversized tractor trailer. Are there any other kind of tractor trailers? Are there any regular-sized or undersized? They're all oversized. And the outbound Long Island Expressway is slow near the Elmhurst tanks. It seems that there are the Petrucci sisters nude, dancing on top of the tanks, and all those cavones driving by are looking. No, really. They're looking. What is there about those tanks that makes these cavones slow down? You know what it is? They want to check and see how full of gas those tanks are. On mass transit, forget about it. The graffiti's just too much. You can't even read the map there. I saw some old guy trying to find out what stop he got off of on the double R, and the poor guy, you know, all you could... you wouldn't mind if they had the inevitable four-letter word followed by second-person pronoun. I mean, that at least you could understand. But what is the language? What are the hieroglyphics that these graffitiite skunks write in? What is it? Lexington...
Marshall is now the guru of our silent movement. All these years, I've been hating the Yankees with such a passion, and I am living in New York all my life, Bob. I've hated them ever since 1941 when Tommy Henricks said something nasty to Mickey Owen, making him drop that curveball from Hugh Casey. They say it's a spitter, but it wasn't a spitter. It was just a good curveball.
We ought to have an affair. We ought to have a social event with everybody who hates the Yankees.
We would fill 4 Yankee stadiums, Bob. By the way,
Listen, I thought they were great. As a matter of fact, I have my own club, Bob. It's the Bring Back Horace Clark Club.
And how, wasn't he...
those were the... Sir, I hate the Yankees, period, whether there's free agency or not. But what Dave Winfield will bat 066 for the year. You're on... hey, pal, why do you use that phony dialect when you call in that phony voice? What's your real voice sound like, pal? You creep. He always calls with that phony Hasidic delivery. He couldn't even carry his glove.
Reggie is the most overrated ball player going today, and I tell you, my biggest moment of crisis will come 5 or 6 years after Reggie retires when they start balloting in the Hall of Fame for Reggie Jackson. And if he comes close to making the Hall of Fame, I will be sick.
That you hate the Yankees because they are arrogant, egotistical, and loudmouthed. Is that right?
That certainly is the way they come through the New York press.
Steinbrenner, Martin, and Jackson, who do you hate the most?
I think George Steinbrenner, because he should be old enough to know better.
All the human tragedies around us, Martin's qualifies as one we do not have to take too seriously. In the tight world of baseball managers, Martin, despite 5 firings, has never been without a job for long, and his services will be sought again sooner or later. It's also hard to see any human tragedy because Martin's life is lived on a cartoon level. Part of this story, however, has got to be the identity of the man who finally brought Billy down. It was not one of your nasty young sports writers who are always sniping at Billy. It was a 52-year-old marshmallow salesman. Do you think that was really the low point of the recent Yankee history?
Oh, absolutely not. That was for me one of the high points. I love to see that drama played out in the pages and see Billy say one thing the next day and something else the second day, and George give it to him, and they even brought Reggie into the middle of the thing.
I want to go to a ball game with you to save my life.
Well, I'm not paying for you.
I mean, everything is okay with you, right? You're even interested in a sport that caters to guys with overactive pituitary glands.
Well, I want to...
Thing that ever happened, basketball. Thank you, sir. Hey, you're the guy that cited the statistics. Dallas Cowboys, as much as I hate them, the Pittsburgh Steelers, as much as I hate them, don't come anywhere near the Yankee domination. It's 4 championships versus, you yourself said, 22 world championships and 32 divisional titles. You don't even know what you're talking about. Typical Yankee fan. You know what it is? It's the air around Yankee Stadium. You've been breathing too much of it.
Unbelievable. I hate them. I hate everything they stand for. You know, I can't even watch them play a night game because if they win, I can't get to sleep.
And you know why? To see them lose. I'm a Yankee. I'm an anti-fan. You've heard of fans? I'm an anti-fan.
I can remember everything.
I don't care who they're playing. The Toronto Blue Jays, Baltimore Orioles. I don't care who they're playing. I'm rooting for the other team.
Well, it was easy to be a Yankee fan all them years. Didn't take anything. There's no thrill. You know, the same people that root for the Yankees, root for Notre Dame, root for Joe Louis.
FDR. Yeah, they're the same people that rooted for the German army in 1940. I thank you, sir.
Okay, well, amateur people who think see, Yankees fans, they don't know anything about baseball. They think they do. And I see these amateur people that try to do these shows on cable TV or on public access radio on baseball, and they call it the Yankee show. They don't give any credit to baseball. Whenever somebody else call up and talk about the Red Sox or the Mets, they go crazy. They're violent, greedy people. They're disgusting.
Well, you said it all, pal. I think we could all retire on that one. Thank you, sir.
The Yankees, because people have a loser's attitude. The Yankees stand for America because...
they don't stand for America. They couldn't care. Do you think Winfield, Jackson, Steinbrenner give a darn about... Do you think they even know where America is?
Yeah, they do.
They do not. All they know is where the best places are in the teams, in the cities of the American League that they have to visit each year.
Well, Bob, is it...
Where the broads hang out near the Superdome in Seattle, the Kingdome in Seattle. Where the best broads on Chicago's South Side when they go to play the White Sox. Come on, they care about it, but
you grew up...
gotta believe it, pal. If there's any justice, the Yankees will never win again until the year 2641. And even then, it'll only be a scratch game against the University of North Carolina. You're on WMCA. Hello.
Hello, Bob Grant.
No, but will we do? I don't know. Why are people surprised when I say hello? Who do they...
I've been saying...
This is Joe Palooka at your service. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry. 2 years old.
Why do people give their ages? I'm hanging up on people who give their ages. Hello. If there's any justice, Gary Allenson will hit 340 and Rick Cerrone will hit 192.
You're ready to, Bob. It's going to have a pronounced effect on the current administration's attempt to deliver us from this economic depression. It affects me personally, too. I'm an unemployed talk show host from another city. For the last 2 years in New York, I can't get a job because all of the talent. And in order to buy into a numbers game in Coney Island, I've been selling peanuts and popcorn at Yankee Stadium. And now you're going to talk that way. Obviously, the attendance is going to go down from 75,000 to about 62,000 talking that way. And I'm never going to be able to get into that numbers game. What does Mr. March have to say about that?
Haters like to watch the Yankees, and we like to go to Yankee Stadium just so long as the Yankees lose.
Listen, I like your style, pal. You're all right.
Gives me a great deal more assurance.
I want to tell you one of the greatest nights I ever had my entire life. And this is exclusive of any encounter with the fairer sex. That is, went to Yankee Stadium in 1976. As a guest of the Yankees, yes. It was a schnorr through WMCA. We were carrying Yankee games then. And I was the only guy cheering in the whole joint. The only other guys who were happy that night were Joe Morgan, Pete Rose, George Foster, a few people like that. Why? Because the Reds beat the Yankees 4 straight. It was wonderful.
Steinbrenner had the New York Press in his pocket. Well, I just read an interview in Baseball Bulletin with Tony Kubek that Steinbrenner tried to get Kubek fired as a baseball broadcaster because Kubek made a negative remark about Steinbrenner on the air. Just, the way Steinbrenner does so many things in such unsportsmanship-like fashion.
Oh, without a doubt.
I don't know how anybody can be proud to root for the Yankees.
Well, I thank you very much.
Very much, Bob. It's been a pleasure being here, and let's wish the Yankees some bad luck for this year.
Bob Marshall, Yankee hater. There'll be a meeting in the George Steinbrenner parking lot designation point after the game, a meeting of the Bring Back Horace Clark fan club. It's now... Be like trading me for the corpse of John J. Anthony, for heaven's sake. Gotta be a law against it. Really, I can't go on. I tell you, I can't believe Jason Thompson. Why didn't the Mets get him? We'll talk about the unimportant things now as we continue, ladies and gentlemen, in a program dedicated to the free and open exchange of ideas and of opinions. Reported at the approaches of the lower level of the George Washington Bridge westbound, the Throg's Neck Bridge is the choice over the Whitestone southbound, the FDR scene near Humboldt Street. Those naked girls are still on the Elmhurst tanks. And on mass transit, the LIR reports 15, 20-minute delays for trains leaving Penn Station due to equipment trouble. Why? There's something wrong when time and time again teams will allow themselves to be euchred by the Yankees. Why would the Pirates take Jim Spencer,
I have no idea.
who is at best 12 to 15 home runs?
Well, they're in trouble with their pitching. So
And
maybe
Jason,
the Yankees gave them some good pitchers.
who did they give him?
Some rookies.
Rookies. Who? David?
No, they wouldn't give them.
Of course not.
Well,
Time and time again. The fellow we had, tell me why all these years the Cleveland Indians have given the likes of, say, Dick Tidrow, Chris Chambliss, Greg Nettles. What have they got in return? A couple of Greek ball players by the name of Alex Bupkis and Themistoklis Bupkis.
Well, you said...
Yankees for many, many reasons.
It starts
But
from
now
childhood.
you've just given me another reason. You, this guy Dotson, and why did Walter Rogers, who had observed this particular peculiar fellow acting in a very agitated and nervous manner, and this fellow Dotson did say that he thought to himself, gee, I wonder if he wants to shoot the president. Why did they just stand there with their hands in their back pockets? Well, one of them go up to one of the many police officers around and say, this fellow's acting suspicious. In order to do it, you'd have the ACLU down on your back immediately because people would have to be frisked.
Yeah.
You'd have to search people.
Well,
We have at least looked today since I clicked and I said, wait a minute, where does that name first come to my attention? And I recall, some of you may remember when, a little over 2 years ago, I went to the Soviet Union. Some of you may also remember that there had been a problem, and it looked for a while as though I would not be able to go to the Soviet Union because they were not going to give me a visa. And it wasn't until certain members of the United States Congress and the Foreign Affairs Chairman, Clement Zablocki of Wisconsin, went to work on it that I did get my visa. When I got to the Soviet Union, I asked an individual whose name was Boris, I asked him why I have this problem. And he said that individuals by the name of Arbatov and Adamov Sounds like a law firm on the Lower East Side. But no, Georgy Arbatov and Joe Adamov had told the Soviets that I was, quote, an anti-Soviet agitator. And I said, of course, they were right. I am anti-Soviet, and I am an agitator. And he looked at me and didn't know what to make of that frank admission on my part. But I put it away somewhere deep in the recesses of this federal brain of mine, and the name Arbatov comes to light today because we are going to talk on our George Arbatov, or Georgy Arbatov, will not have his visa extended, so he can't appear on the Bill Moyers Journal on April 10th. Well, I'm not. But I think it's interesting that this man's visa is not being extended. I think it's also interesting that an American reporter who has credentials that are considered quite liberal has made the unequivocal statement that Alexander Haig is absolutely right, that the Soviets are responsible for terrorism in the world, namely the Middle East. But that isn't what we're talking about. We're talking to Joe Reap about right now. Mr. Reap is live on our news line. This is Bob Grant here in New York City. Mr. Reap is speaking from Washington, D.C. Is that correct, Mr. Reap?
That's right, sir.
And I was intrigued over the fact that Mr. Arbatov had his visa not extended, and the question arises why.
Well, the whole issue is a matter of reciprocity. The fact about Mr. Arbatov's case, Dr. Arbatov's case, is that he applied for a visa for another reason, to attend a conference on the prevention of nuclear war. The conference ended at the end of March, and his visa expired, or it does expire on April 5th. The Soviet embassy asked us for an extension on the visa for the stated purpose of appearing on Mr. Moyer's Journal show. As you're aware, the Soviets in this country have been making frequent appearances on television, including Dr. Arbatov in the past. I think in the past 3 or 4 weeks, they've made about 16 major television appearances, shows like the Sunday talk shows.
Yes.
But we have had no access to Soviet TV or other media in the Soviet Union. We've asked them repeatedly. Our charge has asked them repeatedly for access to Soviet television, to give our viewpoint directly to the Soviet people,
yes,
without having it filtered through their news agency TASS.
Right.
But there is no reciprocity, so we turned down the visa extension because we thought, for the sake of another television appearance, we would not extend it. But we've been open to some charges here at the department that we have the Soviet point of view in this country. That's just not so.
Who made those charges?
Various reporters.
Not American reporters.
Well, yeah.
An American reporter?
Yes, there have been some.
Well, now, who write that visa?
Oh, I wouldn't want to name them. Obvious from the Soviet Union are going to appear on Mr. Moyer's show. He invited them. And they applied for visas, and the reason that they stated for wanting visas was specifically to appear on this show, whereas Dr. Arbatov was simply an extension of the visa he had for another reason.
We can criticize our government and even make outlandish remarks, such as have been made by some American reporters, but there's absolutely, as you well know, no such thing as criticism of the Soviet Union. When I was in the Soviet Union 2 years ago, I asked that very question. At that time, Jimmy Carter was president, and they asked me some questions about the president, and I was somewhat critical. I muted my criticism because I was abroad, but nevertheless, they smiled at that, and I said, do you have any criticism of Brezhnev? And they looked stunned at the mere question, and I said, what would happen if you did criticize him? And their excuse to me was, they didn't criticize him not because they were in a police state, but because so far he'd done everything perfectly. Somewhat strange. I thank you very much, Joe Reap, for being with us, for telling us about Mr. Arbatov, and I take it on the 5th of April he will get on an Aeroflot plane and leave.
That was his original plan, and I think he's going to stick to that, yes.
Good. He's not one of my favorite people, but I must commend him for holding up the trade, the steel, actually. And the question, yesterday we had a man who wrote a book, Confessions of a Yankee Hater, and the question in my mind is, why is it time and time again other teams make alleged trades, such as were made yesterday, and they're not trades at all? Obviously, George Steinbrenner is a hypnotist. He must look deeply into their eyes and be able and say, you will give me what I want. You will give me what I want. But the trade that brought Jason Thompson to the Yankees in a bizarre three-team deal is very suspicious. And I hope that Kuhn kills the deal entirely. I think it's an outrage. Hey, look, thank you.
Oh.
You Cabon. You sound like you have many years behind you. I think you're incredibly naive to believe such an absurd statement.
Why is it absurd?
Let me ask you, try to use what thinking matter you may have. Why would the war in Vietnam benefit the Rockefellers?
And with the...
What had to do with the war in Vietnam?
Oh, he had to do it later on?
You know something? You've just revealed that any pursuit of this conversation would be totally inane. I tell you, it's amazing. There must be something in the water. No other way. And in view of the fact that the politicians caved in like cheap cameras all these years to give in to the transit union for these absurd, obscene pensions and fringe benefits, that's one of the reasons why the course has escalated. In Kino Silva, even though Ralph Houck has signed with the Boston Red Sox and is managing that team, Fiorentino Silva says the Bring Back Ralph Houck fan club will continue to meet at the George Steinbrenner designated parking lot area behind Yankee. I don't like him because I think that he has a complete domination over baseball that is bad. It's bad for two reasons. If you hate the Yankees as I do, it's bad, and also if you believe in fair play, it's bad. I wonder why the Pittsburgh Pirates gave up a fine catcher like Ed Ott, got a great hitting first baseman with his career ahead of him like Jason Thompson, and then turned Jason Thompson right over to the Yankees immediately for a has-been who is a never was like Jim Spencer. Does a player leave the Yankees and have good years? Even players that were highly touted. I mean, remember Rusty Torres? He was supposed to be a sensation.
You're right.
Yet the Yankees get the Dick Tidrows, the Eddie Lopax. I mean, I'm going way back. They get the Greg Nettles. They get the Chris Chamblises. Look, Cleveland gave up Tidrows, Chambliss, Nettles. What did Cleveland get in return?
You're right.
Politicians don't jump on organized labor. As a matter of fact, politicians have catered to organized labor. That's why we're in the mess we're in.
You really think so? Let me ask you something.
This program, if I want.
That's right, right? And you...
I am against
the people the impression that the...
I'm not only giving the impression, I'm saying it out.
Well, you're right.
If it weren't for the fact that Bob Wagner, John Lindsay, and yes, even Eddie Koch, even my beloved Eddie Koch, gave in to the Transit Workers Union, we wouldn't be quite in this bad a mess.
But you're right.
Some of these people. Treasurer Herb Bauk said that he has received word from consumer advocate Richard Kessel that Nassau County, New York prisoners are now getting $100 a week in federal funds for taking college courses in the county jail. Prisoners study while carrying out their jail sentences. Courses are given free of charge in the jail by Nassau Community College instructors. And Bauk said that the payments were supposed to be for employees learning job skills to get off the welfare rolls under the CETA program. He said that he learned of 14 prisoners who have completed 10-week courses in typing and remedial mathematics, and upon their release from prison will get $1,000 each. Mr. Kessel said that the $100 a week payments were intended by Congress to support poverty area residents while they were learning job skills, not prisoners. Okay, two contributions from the How Does This Grab You department. Conversation. If you're calling from New Jersey, before I have the lines ripped out, 624-6855. Because France has been a pipsqueak, two-bit hypocrite nation ever since. Just as France was duped by Hitler, they're being duped by the Soviet Union. Now, let's go to Helmut Schmidt. I don't know what's happening to him, but suddenly he seems to be waking up. And yet, Thatcher is the prime minister, but if Margaret Thatcher should be replaced by the Labour Party, then forget it. I've been to Europe many, many times, in different parts of Europe, is I get this sense that they're scared stiff. That's what creepy demonstrators in this country are, who anytime the United States is involved in anything are demonstrating. Why aren't they demonstrating in behalf of Poland? these same limp-wristed lefty groups. Why not? When I use the phrase limp-wristed, are you a homosexual?
No, I'm not, but
Well, then why would you even think of a homosexual?
I just feel that it's...
Why would limp-wristed be a synonym for homosexual?
I mean, Bob, let's face it. I mean, everyone realizes that. I mean,
A limp-wristed person is a person who is weak-willed, a person who is a dupe, a person who is, I mean, if you don't like to use the word limp-wristed, fine, we won't use it. We don't have to. We can get along without it. I mean, if that's going to distract you from what is really the central issue, and that is that leftist causes always find sympathetic protesters that can tie up cities, that can infiltrate Bryant Park with teeming masses, and yet where are these same individuals who protest over so many things? Why are they not protesting against the Soviet Union?
I agree with that much, but
We want a society where the people who protest because they spontaneously feel that way, not because they're being duped. No, I don't think it's spontaneous. I think it's led. I think it's orchestrated. And proof of that is the fact that there's no... Why is there... Let me ask you, why is there no outpouring by these very same people against the Soviet Union, what they're doing?
Because they feel that there's enough people on the other side talking about that, so they only take issue with...
Do you really believe that? If you do, then you're not worthy of my wasting any more time on you. Questioning whether you're honest or not, the question is how you're able to function without a brain, which, of course, you do quite well. The statement, the most ludicrous of all, it doesn't even rate being called disgraceful, was allowing Herbert Daughtry, the ex-convict, to be on television, blaming Ronald Reagan for what's been going on for 20 months in Atlanta and what went on in Buffalo. What went on in Buffalo, the shootings of 4 people up there, took place when Jimmy Carter was still president. Ronald Reagan has been president now, it's 70 days. The killing of those youngsters in Atlanta started 20 months ago. How, by any stretch of even his imagination, he can expect people to believe that Ronald Reagan's responsible for it is beyond me. I don't blame Herbert Daughtry. He's just enjoying the fact that the press is so idiotic that they even waste their time interviewing him. And I think Channel 2 really had no business putting him on television over the weekend. I tell you what, I'll make a deal with you, pal. I'll make a deal with you.
Why don't you listen?
No, because I've heard you since September of 1970. You are the most bigoted caller I've ever had. I don't understand how anybody that hates as much as you could survive. We are so reluctant to really throw the book. I'm not even talking about the death penalty, which, of course, we'll never have as long as he carries the governor of the state, which, of course, New Jersey will never have on a bread and burn, but who knows who's going to replace him. But put that out of your mind for just a moment and talk about how we address ourselves to the subject of crime in addition to the death penalty. Take the case of a brother and sister. This happened in Asbury Park last July. They were there in a hotel. He's 23, she's somewhere in the 25. And next door to them in this resort hotel in Asbury Park, was a 74-year-old woman. They went into that woman's apartment, into her room, strangled her, put her head in the bathtub, and finished her off by drowning her, and took several $100s from her purse. Now, they plea bargained this case, and in order to make this skunk, this mutant, this killer, this vicious animal, in order to make him eligible to get out after a period of time, they dropped the robbery charges. In other words, the record will show that all he did, and I'm putting that in quotes, was kill a 74-year-old defenseless woman. That's all. I don't know why they have to do things like that. I want to know why. I want to know what is so rotten about our so-called criminal justice system that we have to do things like that. I just use that one case to literally literally hundreds of thousands like it every year. I've just been convicted today, who had been out on parole for a past murder. When you kill somebody once, that to me suggests, at the very least, that you're not fit to be in society ever again. Whether you get the death penalty or not, you should never be turned loose in society again. You're quotas, right? Put all these murder victims around the country. There's got to be somebody guilty for the commission of the crime. Now, don't give me that song and dance that they convict innocent people.
Well, it's possible.
It's possible, but very, very unlikely.
Well,
first of all, in the automatic appeal, there's about 22 appeals, stays of execution, all that kind of disregard that a person has mandatory to go up to question law. And even though it's the court to be picked up and dropped in the river, that's quite happy that by the committee, whether how he felt about the arrangement with Vice President George Bush being in charge of what was called crisis management. He was honest and he said he really wasn't all that crazy about it. Did they want him to lie about it and say, oh, he loved it, and then later the Marriott McGrawleys and the Dan Radins would be coming out of the woodwork saying, he's not out. You're a disgruntled employee.
No, sir, I'm retired.
I see. Well, are you a disgruntled retired employee?
I'm an assistant supervisor.
Oh, why are you telling us this? I still don't.
I feel...
Zlub, and I'm an average zlub.
Yes, sir.
Really, it finds what you're saying totally uninteresting.
Well...
If it weren't for the fact that we were watching paint dry as we listened to you, we would really be bored.
What?
Thank you for the call. I really mean that. Call again. Enjoy your retirement.
Oh.
By the way, what are you doing in your retirement to keep active?
I'm working.
Working?
Yes, sir. Working as an electrician.
Are you double dipping, pal?
Huh?
Are you double dipping?
What do you mean?
I mean, what kind of pension do you get, pal?
A beautiful one.
What is it?
I put...
Make me sick. Tell me how much. Make me sick. Tell me how much.
The last year I made $32,000.
And pension?
My pension will be, well, starting off at $16,000 now. That's off the top, right?
See, that's why this city is almost destroyed fiscally because of these obscene pensions for guys like you.
I wanted to be a radio announcer, but I figure I wasn't that smart.
Thank you, pal.
Okay, right.
What am I laughing at? Hey, did you...
In the streets. No one mentioned the fact that they're spreading out all over the country, and they're still under control of just one person. And although we're positive now, I still remember the thing about how power corrupts absolutely. And I was worried about that, and no one ever mentioned the fact that there were no other controls except for one man organizing, a tremendous amount of people and spreading out over the country. I wonder what your feelings were on that.
You remind me of the guy who is graduating this June from college, and he graduates magna cum laude. Happens that the big company in the area has offered him a supervisorial job training program. He's going to start at $28,000 a year. He'll be up to $50,000 by the time he's 25, and in all likelihood be president of the company. And his best girl says she's crazy about him, and yes, she'd love to marry him, and everything's just going great. But he's got a somber look on his face, and somebody says, "What's the matter?" And he says, "Well, I was just wondering what it'll be like when I'm 85 years old." Well, with all the things we have to worry about, you worried whether Curtis Sliwa is going to be subjected to Lord Acton's dictum that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Is that what you're worried about?
Yes, a little bit, yeah.
Oh, gee, I wish I were you. Are you reading?
No, sir, I'm not. But it turns...
Are you a robot?
No, I'm not a robot.
Well, then why do you sound like either A, you're reading, or B, you're a robot? No. Why don't you sound like a regular person who's talking? How old are you, by the way?
Well, I'm 34.
34. Who do you want to be when you grow up?
Bob, why do you always interrupt me? Why do you always get offensive? I'm trying to...
I said, why do I? Let me ask you, why do I have to be involved with your psychosis?
I'm not psychotic.
I mean, did your analyst tell you that I have to be involved with your fantasies, huh?
I'm not psychotic. I'm trying to make a point how this movie,
Listen to this guy, everybody. Listen to this.
turns to Tom...
You know what you sound like? You sound like a character that Phil Roth was contemplating using in a book but felt was too obscene.
Well, Philip Roth is your typical Jewish writer. You like to write about masturbation, but...
that's your trouble. You see, your mother was right. See what happened to you?
I would just like to say it turns this obscure incident with 5,000 legionnaires against 900 bandits into a great turning point in history. I think it's an attempt to encourage a Kahaniite mentality and a zealot bandit mentality among the 20th century Jews. It was pure Zionist propaganda.
Tomorrow, we'll be back at 4 o'clock. I'll be looking for you. Will you be looking for me? Until then, this is Bob Grant reminding you your influence counts. Use it. Get Kaddafi. Nice guy. But he ought to sit in the dugout, for heaven's sake. Let him be a coach or something. Isn't that amazing? He could never make the transition from player to broadcaster. Now, Bill is excellent. But Phil is a lovely man. See, this is known as extemporaneous rambling about nothing, really. I mean, just, blabbing. The open mouth with Bob Grant. Now, a stream of consciousness. And whatever he thinks about, he'll say. He stopped short at... Did that go out? All right, I'm going to try it again. Don't cut me now. I want to say that it... There. Did it go out? Do you come? I'll slip it through this time. Furthermore, you can take up... That went out. Oh, they wouldn't dare cut me. They wouldn't dare. We're buying decent phone calls from honest people. You're not honest.
You're not a decent person.
Oh, well, then why do you listen to me? Why do you listen to me?
Because I wonder why some psychiatrist hasn't edited you yet.
I see. You're writing a treatise on psychiatry?
Well, not on you.
You're not coming through. First, you tell me... get off. You have to tell me the PR guy for one of the candidates running for governor was there. And he did not know me. Look, as well known as I'd like to think I am, there are some people who, for one reason or other, have not heard the Bob Grant program. And he asked me, he said, what kind of program do you do? And I was trying to explain the nature of a telephone talk program. And he was trying to understand what it was. His wife didn't know and he didn't know. Neither one of them knew Bob Grant. Of course, that was great for the ego, but neither one knew. He had no idea. We talked a little bit, and he says, you've got to get together with my man because I think if you've met him, you'd like him. Can we get together? Can we have lunch? Blah, blah, blah. And as I was leaving, he said, nice meeting you, Bob, and I enjoy your show. Gentleman who was representing a gubernatorial candidate, I mentioned the referendum that you're trying to get on the ballot, the right of referendum. And this man made a face. He made a face. Your man is not for this. He said, well, I don't know how he stands on this. And I said, well, you better find out by Sunday the 26th. Like really big guy, hey, that's my ring, that's my head, hey, come here, you, I am on the wall of the building. And how did that happen? When anonymous Joey Gallo got it. And by the way, this is the anniversary. He got it in I don't know, April 7th or 6th, somewhere around there, of 1972. Because Bonama Colombo got it in June of 71. That's how he keeps track. See, Bonama Joe C got it in 71 in June. And then a Bonama Joe G got it in track. Everything. I I told the people that if they wanted to look at the Joey Gallows people out there, they had to pay a 10% surcharge. And Paul Ianello called me to tell me. He said, everybody wants to hear the Joey Gallows people. We don't have a Joey Gallows table. I said, make one up. Oh, excuse me. Well, they're carting me off to Central Islip at 6 o'clock.
You're entertaining, baby. You're entertaining when you're on double R, baby. Nighttime, baby, you were number one, baby. You was hot, baby. You was the best, baby. It's drive time now, baby. You gotta get back on the track, baby. What's happening, baby? You remember my good buddy Uptown, baby? Uptown was hot, baby. Uptown was on the money, baby.
Is this Uptown?
What's happening, baby?
You sound different, Uptown.
Yeah, baby, this ain't Uptown, baby. This is Pittsburgh, baby. Uptown, my buddy, boy.
Well, I liked Uptown because Uptown was going to show me where you get $8 a head and all those things.
Yeah, baby. I got to say this for you, baby. Uptown getting me this scoop on you, baby. And I'm teaching you how about it, baby. And I'm going to put you on the money, baby. Check it out, baby. I'm getting the dip. The lady's tip. The women's fight for my delight is uptown. I'm cool. I'm out of sight. Yeah, if you don't fly all day all night.
Is Uptown still where the action is?
Baby, Uptown's always where the action is.
That's where it's at, huh?
Always, baby.
What do you think would happen? In all seriousness, if I were to go Uptown, you think I can survive?
Baby, come on up here. I feel good time, baby. I got all the women ready for you, baby. Everything you want.
Think I can handle it?
Oh, baby, I'll make sure you handle for you.
All right, I'm going to go take my vitamin E and I'll meet you at a quarter of 100 Captain Lennox. Okay, pal. You're out to get a globe master. You load it up. Have a palm bay door put in. And when we get over the mid-Atlantic, open the palm bay door. Right now, that we've gone through in this country, and I believe, it is my opinion, I have a theory, that if we do nothing more than remove the excesses that we've had in, for example, affirmative action programs, busing programs, all of that garbage, we will do a lot to make this a more sane nation to live in. Also, what about the excess in the women's lib movement? The incredible remarks made by one former comedian, definitely former, name of Dick Gregory.
That's right. It's been printed in shirts and stuffed in thousands of mailboxes in these people's homes in Atlanta, and saying that the government is behind this, that they have come up with a cure for cancer.
They're saying that the government is behind the disappearance and subsequent death of about 25, 26 individuals.
That's right, because they're good, and they're substituting bodies with the real bodies.
You see, most people did not...
perpetrating assaults on those people.
Well, Dick Gregory, I don't know if it's all that jogging, all that fasting, or what.
Dropped acid too?
Yeah, he's done a whole lot of things, but Dick Gregory, let's face it, has some bizarre, but very bizarre thoughts.
I agree.
About actually smearing yourself with red paint. Mr. Lewis has been consistent, writes in the Sunday Times, and I quote, "A group of terrorists, highly disciplined and utterly brutal in its disregard for human life, set out to overthrow the existing order and establish a Marxist state. Its methods are murder and intimidation. Most of its victims are innocent civilians. Such a group would be almost universally detested and condemned in this and other Western countries. Right? Wrong. Not if the group in question is the Provisional Irish Republican Army." The death of Bobby Sands last week demonstrated once again the curious romantic mist that obscures some people's vision when they consider the IRA. As just part of the quote that I allude to. Another thing, and that was what I was talking about, was the fact that the IRA provisional political platform calls for a Marxist system.
First of all, I have no trouble with that. It doesn't mean that you cannot, as a lot of people from all backgrounds of the entire spectrum of politics in this country and over there, cannot support the chief aim, which is the removal of British rule and unification of one Ireland.
Well, that is that these people are being lionized when they shouldn't be. And they are being lionized because people are overlooking what they really are, because they're concentrating on what you're talking about. And therein lies the great paradox. And it is a paradox. It's an incredible paradox. Human consequences.
What would be appalling about a socialization?
No, what's appalling is the way the IRA goes about its business of killing anybody and everybody, including an awful lot of innocent people.
Well, you have to understand that there's means to an end.
I don't have to understand. Oh, means to an end? I see. Okay, well then fine. Then let's bring back Adolf Hitler. Jimmy Go Kicks. Jimmy Go Kicks. Remember Jimmy Go Kicks? My man in the Bronx. Nicoline. You remember Nicoline? Nicoline Avolio, who's handling all the action in Manhattan. And I thought you'd like to go out to Queens to handle the action there. What does he take me for, anyway? Okay. Oh, he says, been some time since I saw you at Bonanima Joe Colombo's affair. Oh. Don't read that on the air. Oh, it's too late for that. Okay. Your lunch at 12. Wanda himself took the Fifth Amendment only 742 times at his last testimony in Washington before the Senate Labor Rackets Committee. And Mr. Matsutuda Gwanda said he never even heard of Carmine Persico. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Paul Needlenose Menage.
All right, thanks, Bob. Thanks very much. I lost 4 fangs. Okay, it's been a long time since we got together for this here thing here. This is our thing. Or as we say where I come from, Cosa Nostra. Bob don't like me to say them things. It's that bad thing, Bob. All right. Now, let's see. I'm here on a work release program, so I gotta work. Now, tonight, heavyweight title fight between Kenny Norton, who formerly held part of the title. They got knocked out by George Foreman. And, of course, we got Jerry Cooney. I thought it was spelled C-U-N-I. I thought maybe he was Italian. But it's C-O-N-E-Y. But he's a pretty good puncher, no, anyway. Got a good left hook. And he's got a lot of power, throws good punches. He's good. Cooney's got a record 24-0. 20 of his fights, 5 knockout. Yeah, he knocked him out. Nobody died, though. Too bad. Nobody died. But he knocked him out. He's going to weigh in at 225 and a quarter. Norton, on the other hand, 42 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw. He won 33 of his fights by KOs. He's a quarter pound less. Kenny Norton, how old is he? How do you figure how old? Well, I don't care how old. Norton's going to win in 9. He'll stop Cooney in 9. So you guys, the smart money is on Kenny Norton. This ain't taking nothing away. Ain't taking nothing away from Jerry Cooney. But Norton in 9. He'll stop him TKO in 9 rounds. And if he does, hey, Cooney, you better take that dive. Did that go out over the air, Bob? I mean, did everybody hear that, including Bobby Morgenthau? You better take him out of here, folks. He's getting carried away. Ladies and gentlemen, 462. Why'd you give that out? Why did he give that 462 number out? Oh, for heaven's sake. He gave it out. He gave me the number, then he gives it out. Now, I can't play it. That's how he got even with me. Anyway, Hugo Matsutuda Gwanda, Paul Needlenose brought to you through the courtesy of the Hugo Matsutuda Gwanda family, Rudy Ashpara, Conciliere. Make it in. I do if we get a chance to talk tomorrow. Until then, I remind you, your influence counts. Use it. Get Kaddafi. What is Victor Gottbaum doing backing the hunger strikers in Ireland? What is he doing backing terrorists, speaking of terrorism? And did you see Colonel Kaddafi, speaking of terrorism, did you see Colonel Kaddafi interviewed brilliantly, I thought, by Robert McNeil and on public television. Did you see that arrogant, if at times wan smile? He sat there in, I think, something that my great-grandma handed down to him. He was wrapped in some kind of actually what it looked like, a faded towel that beachgoers used when they went to the Black Sea in Odessa, 1906. A faded towel, at one time there had been stripes, but it was a cheap towel and it faded after a couple of washes. Anyway, Colonel Kaddafi, who denied over and over again that he had been the inspiration and the financial resource for the raid on the Israeli Olympic Village, in which 11 Israelis, trainers, athletes had been killed, denied over and over again that he was responsible for various acts of terrorism, and had a particular circuitous denial, that's a fancy word for roundabout denial, of the arming of IRA terrorists. But the bazooka that was used to blow up a British vehicle in Belfast today is a Russian weapon. Are you aware that the IRA is using Russian weapons? They didn't buy them directly from the Russians. The belief is, and it's more than a belief, it's a conviction on the part of many individuals, that those arms are being supplied by Colonel Kaddafi. Anyway, what else is new? I want to thank a WMCA listener in New Haven, Connecticut, for calling to my attention that U.S. Representative Robert S. Walker has proposed outlawing the hiring and admissions quotas based on sex or race in corporations and colleges. A ban on the use of quotas to achieve affirmative action objectives is warranted, since the present system amounts to little more than reverse discrimination and affront to the true intent of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Walker proposal merits widespread support from the civil rights community as well as the public at large. It is, or should be, an infinitely preferable alternative to the constitutional amendments United States Senator Orrin G. Hatch of Utah has proposed to ban affirmative action. And that is indeed the question. He says, does anybody ask whether these people are qualified in such a super-sensitive job? And the answer is no. The qualification of that person as a performer is not even taken into account. Incredible.
So that he has something like 12 of those monies that we are sending to him. It's incredible to me, the passivity and apparent stupidity of the American population. There's never any expression of resentment or rage at the fact that probably not 1 in 2 Libyans presently alive would be alive without Western imperialism. The Europeans, the Americans went in there, found the stuff, found the petroleum. These people were using dried camel turds to cook with.
Yeah, what is
Ziggy Freud here? I'm not the Sigmund Freud. My name is Ziggy Freud. See,
Ziggy Freud. You want to know something? You're the answer to my prayers, because I've been told that I needed your services desperately.
Yes, I want to talk about your paranoia. You see, you have a...
You want me to... Wait a minute now, I'm sitting up. You want me to lie down?
No, you could stand up. You could stand up there. You could sit down. You could do anything you want, but listen.
Do I call you doctor?
No, just Ziggy.
Well, all right. The reason I asked if I could call you doctor is, there are a lot of people on the air who are called doctor who aren't doctors.
No, I know. They got their lousy PhDs, and they got a...
No, they don't even have PhDs.
Oh, they got a book, and they got a doctor. Now, let me tell it to you.
Yes.
Ziggy, you have a problem that you think that...
Wait a minute, you called me Ziggy.
Oh, well, I'm crazy, too. Mr. Grant, you have this paranoia that you think the only people that can get a job on NBC is the Albert family and the Field family. And it's not true. It's not true that they have a maternity ward in NBC that they should have the children on the stage. They get hired there, but that's true that all the family gets in there. They get a bonus, but they don't get the job. You understand?
No, I don't understand.
You don't understand that the only people that are working on NBC is the Albert family and the Field family? You got to have a connection.
Well, they're not the only place where having a connection counts. It's a radio station where it's obvious all you need is the same name that begins with the same vowel and ends with the same vowel. I mean, regardless of what else, to be on the air, that's all you need.
It's terrible they reacted to this whole thing, this whole situation.
You mean to say, Ziggy, that's why you called, because of that aspect?
Yeah, you were terrible about the whole thing. I mean, I thought it was terrible. And I should think you should calm down and don't get excited, because you got a nice job, you're making plenty of money. And don't worry if you're not on television. You'll make it. You're a good man, you're a smart man.
Suddenly you're sounding Jewish.
Yeah, well,
you didn't start out that way. What? Now suddenly you're getting Jewish.
I was German, I'm Jewish. I would be Italian as you want me to be.
No, I don't. I like your style. You know that? Once he has the nuclear bomb, there's no telling what that maniac will do with it.
And he's going to get it if it keeps going like it's going.
Well, according to...
He dropped it on Israel, probably.
Well, you see, a bomb of that type, you don't drop it on a... No, my guess is he'd drop it on Cairo if Sadat's still alive.
Cairo?
Yeah.
Oh, he don't like them?
Where the heck have you been, for heaven's sake?
I didn't know that.
He says Anwar Sadat is the greatest enemy and the greatest traitor of the Arab people, and he thinks that if Sadat were out of the way, everything would be okay. He's got it backwards, though. If he's for their lives in that sense, in my opinion, if they want to starve themselves to death, then the government is correct in letting them starve themselves to death.
Yeah, well.
And they wanted to croak.
Yeah.
How would they expect? If I asked you on WMCA, hello?
Gigante.
What's on your mind, sir?
I'd like to ask you this question. Democratic processes of this government. I just wanted to get that in, that's all.
Well, why? You sound paranoid. You thought I was going to clip you, didn't you?
Because I called you Gigante, and I always wondered about that. But
I'm proud of that name. It's a great name. It means I'm just sorry that I came into this business when you couldn't be Italian and be on the air.
Oh, is that the reason? Because I always wondered why I thought...
That's right. CBS said to me, that's why I cut my eye teeth in this business on the air. They didn't want anybody with foreign-sounding names.
You have a great name, and you should be...
They didn't want anybody with foreign-sounding names. So we had Jewish guys and Italian guys, and we even had a German guy. His name was von Schnarf. They made... You know the funny thing is, you could have a name like... most of the guys took Irish names. It was okay to be Irish, but you couldn't be Jewish, Polish, Italian. I mean, it was crazy. It's crazier in a different way now. Now you can't be male and white. You're on...
I just wanted to make mention of a book that I just finished reading. It's called The Terror Network by a woman named Claire Sterling. I wanted to say that if anybody has any doubts whatsoever...
You mean about Kaddafi?
About Kaddafi, about his support. I think it's $3 million so far he's given and contributed to the IRA. If anybody has any doubt that the IRA are not true terrorists in every sense of the word, I wish they'd just read that book, the chapter called, I think it's The Longest War. It's very interesting. And not only that, but when they come over to the United States to raise funds, they're instructed, these members of the IRA, not to mention the fact that they are Marxist, and as a matter of fact, you have to read. And Daniel Schur gave this book a very good review in the New York Times book review.
Right, even from Daniel Schur, even from Schur.
Even from Schur, as liberal as he is, which surprised me. You know, and, that's why I had to run out and check the book out.
Because you can guarantee if Schur could have found any holes in it, he would have reported that. Because he's sympathetic to those leftist causes. Well, I really don't see the need for the city council. It's the most needless legislative body in the land. I don't see the need for the borough presidency. I thought there was one city. I don't, Look, politicians, they're like, remember in those old westerns where Slim Somerville would, or Gabby Hayes, one of those guys used to say, I'm going to put my head on a stick here, and I'm going to hold it up over that little rock there and see if anybody shoots. And the guy would put the hat up, and boom, they'd shoot the hat off. He'd say, oh, they're out there. But The city council, like all political groups, they test it. They put the hat out to see if anybody shoots. Nobody shot, so they're going to do it. For example, we used to have 39 members a few years ago, back in the early 70s. They increased that to the 43. And the excuse they used was so-called minority representation. Okay, so they got away with the 43. Now they went up to 45. Now they'll go up to 50. You know, keep going, keep going, keep going. And look, we don't need 43, so what do we need with 45? It's like when all them westerns, they were a lot of fun. Hey, about a 4-year-old who was tortured to death with scalding water by her mother. I am outraged. And I feel that if I could get my hands on that woman, I would choke the life out of her in 2 seconds flat. I want to ask the defense attorney for Mark Chapman. Mark Chapman. You know, he's in Rikers because he is charged with murdering John Lennon. I want to ask you, Mr. Marks, you say the jury is prejudiced against your client. Well, what is it you expect anyway? John Lennon is very much dead, in an early grave. Somebody put him there. Are you trying to tell us that anybody who's prosecuted is being set upon? I don't understand. My father, I know that I'd make sure that this guy got it. Right. Somebody might get all upset. The ACLU might get upset, and I wouldn't say that on the air.
Right.
Thank you, dear. Yehuda Blum, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations.
A nuclear reactor near Baghdad, the sole purpose of which has been to produce an atomic bomb to destroy the state of Israel. And as you know, Iraq is a country which does not suffer from a shortage in oil. It is one of the richest oil-producing countries, so they don't need a nuclear reactor to produce nuclear energy for energy's sake. Iraq is a country whose academic standing within the academic community is not such that it would have warranted the construction of a nuclear reactor for scientific purposes. And the Iraqis have repeatedly boasted over the years of their intention to liquidate Israel by all means available to them. And more specifically, with regard to the nuclear research that they're conducting, they were dropping very ominous hints that the purpose was to construct a bomb to destroy the state of Israel. We had reliable information that this nuclear reactor would become operational within a matter of weeks through the introduction of fissionable material, that it would become a hot reactor. In other words, if we had waited until then, and if we had bombed the nuclear reactor after it became hot, the nuclear radiation and the nuclear fallout that would have resulted would have created a very real danger to hundreds of thousands of civilian residents of nearby Baghdad, which is the capital of Iraq. And so we wanted to avoid that, the unnecessary loss of human lives. This was more or less the last moment at which we could attack the nuclear reactor without inflicting unnecessary harm on civilians. Moreover, we also chose a Sunday, which is a Christian day of rest, because we knew that the 100 to 150 foreign experts that were employed on that nuclear plant would be absent on that day. Being in a state of war for the past 33 years, they have even refused to conclude an armistice agreement with Israel. And when we, at the last session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, that is, introduced a draft resolution to the effect that all the nations of the Middle East should convene to discuss the establishment of a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East, it was the Iraqis who led the opposition to that Israeli proposal. All these years, Iraq was one of the leading powers in fomenting hatred and belligerence against the state of Israel. Iraq, even when it attacked Iran, told officially the entire world that this was only a prelude to the liberation, quote-unquote, of Jerusalem. Their intentions have been clear all along, and it was an act of legitimate self-defense. Of course we are aware of it, because even at the recent session of the UN General Assembly, Iraq and Iran were accusing each other of being Zionists. So that provided the entertainment to an otherwise somber affair, the war between the two countries. But when those two arch enemies didn't find any more reasonable accusations than accusing each other of being Zionists, I think it's a measure of the rationality that permeates all their activities.
Iraq, the Russians may send tanks across the border into Poland, and world statesmen may be shocked, but the barrage of women's magazines talking about sex, sex, sex goes on. Yeah, and why don't they leave it alone, for heaven's sake? Why? I'll tell you why. Because they make money off of it, that's why.
Done. And there's always an evolution to everything, just like busing and integration and everything. There's always a response that follows later on, I think.
Jim, I think your analogy is absurd, but I thank you nevertheless for your call. Point out, as long as you raise the subject, though, that I keep hammering away that there are murderers who are let loose, there are people who serve time for murder when they should really be executed, and I want to point out somebody by the name of Lemuel W. Smith.
Yeah.
Who is a convicted killer, and he's charged with the gruesome murder of that female prison guard that up at Greenhaven, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's another argument for the death penalty. If he had been given the death penalty, he wouldn't have been alive to murder that woman guard, would he?
No, of course not.
It's my own opinion that Kaddafi's days are numbered anyway. I can't really say what I know, because I don't know, but I have heard something within the last 4 days, 5 days, that makes me almost be able to predict Kaddafi won't be around by the end of the year.
Well, maybe the situation.
Again, great interest. Yesterday's excellent piece, and usually they're all excellent, by William Safire, former speechwriter for former President Richard Nixon, and they call him the House Conservative for the New York Times, but I think he's more than that. I think he's a person who stimulates thinking, regardless of what political viewpoint you hold. He's doing what a person who is a columnist should do, and that is provoking thought.
In my opinion, the fact that Israel has bombed a nuclear power plant in Iraq proves the fact that Israel was born out of English and French genocide against the Palestinian people, and has existed only by the force of Israeli genocide backed by the United States. That Israel is a terrorist state that only exists by the terror against the Palestinian people.
Not even worthy of a comment. You're on
Attack Cuba because the Russians have missiles in Cuba.
We should have bombed Cuba into the Caribbean years ago, pal. Peter Goldman, who is the director of the Center of International Security in Washington. The center researches national security and foreign policy matters. And we're going to do this.
Well, the center is basically a research center. Sometimes it's called a think tank, which brings together former diplomats, former defense and intelligence personnel, former economists and historians. Hopefully the center believes that peace requires strength and has warned for a long time about the Soviet threat. We concentrated a lot in the Middle East. Joseph Cherba, who formerly worked with Air Force Intelligence, wrote a book, Retreat from Freedom, which criticized the last decade of this sense of appeasement, policies of appeasement is what I would call it, rather than deterrence and resistance, and therefore entitled this book that America has had a decade of a retreat from freedom. We feel as a very important strategic asset of the United States.
All right,
action that will has a stabilizing effect on the Middle East in the sense that it prevents an aggressive dictator from using nuclear weapons to attack its neighbors or to threaten nuclear war. I believe that the Israeli attack means that the next war, the next time that the conflict turns into full-scale warfare, will be fought with conventional weapons and not with nuclear weapons, and we can all sleep easier. I think it was a very, very positive action from the point of view of United States security. This fight was the general counsel of the center until about 2 months ago, and now when he was invited onto the staff of the National Security Council. The Oil Weapon Demystified was printed in the publication called Policy Review, which is put out by the Heritage Foundation.
Mr. Feith's thesis is?
Yes. First, he points out that he concentrates a lot on Saudi Arabia, so let's stick to Saudi Arabia for the moment, since that's the leading Arab exporter. But firstly, Saudi Arabia is not doing us a favor by keeping their prices slightly lower than the other OPEC countries or by keeping their production levels up. They simply seek, and the whole policy of Saudi Arabia is to find their optimal price and production level to make as much money as they can. He goes further than that. He also shows that they need this money very badly. And for many reasons which I can get into in a little while. The corollary to that is that no matter what this nation's policy is towards the Saudis or towards the Arab-Israeli conflict, this policy will not affect either the price or the supply of oil. In other words, we may be missing baseball now, but we will not be missing oil. And then he brings in example after example after example to prove this thesis. Firstly, they cannot withhold so much. So let me go. Let's take an example, 1973-74. You mentioned it before I came on the air.
Yes.
Countries were singled out for the boycott or the embargo at that time. That was the Netherlands and the United States. Both of these countries received as much oil, if not more, than any other country in per capita. We did better than the countries which were not singled out for the embargo for many reasons. The oil market is such, that if you have the money, you will get your oil. It goes into a kind of a pool, you see. The Saudis, firstly, don't control the destination of their oil. It goes into a pool.
Yes.
And therefore, as long as the oil is in this pool, as long as we can pay for it, we will get the oil. They really don't have the power to embargo, specific targets. The only power that they might have would be to totally cut their production. But this is to commit national suicide. They can't. It is their only source of income. It would be like the United States totally cutting its entire production. You have to understand, firstly, they have tremendously expensive production programs now. And they're creating a whole new infrastructure. They spent... last year, they spent somewhere close to $100 billion, $100 billion. They have an income of $120 billion. They can't cut much. They can go down $1 million. In other words, they have a little bit of range in which they can fluctuate from 8.5 million barrels per day to 10.5 million barrels per day. But that's it. They cannot, as Sheikh Zamani has threatened, cut down to 5 million barrels a day or 6 million barrels a day. Where are they going to cut? All the various princes are going to lose their money. Their whole development program will go into smithereens. They are rational people in this respect. You understand? I mean, this is their living, and they love, and wealth also gives them power.
Ladies and gentlemen,
to sacrifice this power, I doubt it. What happens, though, is when an oil policy decision of an Arab regime affects the United States, for good or for bad, and a pretext can be found to call this decision a political reward or a punishment, then the Saudis call it so. But when no pretext exists, then they simply say we're changing our production levels due to economic reasons. But the reasons are always economic. Now, you do have cases that hurt us is that they totally cut production.
Right here on Weapon Demystified, where Douglas Feith concludes the Arabs saying, we're going to have an embargo. He says that that's very similar to a Mel Brooks movie of a few years ago. In that movie, a hunted outlaw fended off an advancing throng by grabbing himself at the throat, pointing a gun at his own head, and screaming something like, "If you come any closer, I'll shoot." The throng froze in stupefaction. It was hilarious. The world's similar reaction to Arab oil threats, however, is funny only to the Arabs. Let's talk about... Okay, now the shocking disclosure that I said. Right. I really hope there are no cardiac arrests as a result of my telling you that the format of this program is a telephone talk format. That is, you may actually call in by dialing for who, blah, blah, blah. He said, but I wouldn't call you. I said, well, why? And his wife says, he's afraid. What is the gestalt? What is the chemistry? What is it that happens that makes a person afraid of a verbal dressing down? A public humiliation? Is that what it is? Anyway, which is what I really am. I'm a frustrated psychiatrist, what I really am. When did you first become aware of the fact that you were afraid to call me? What is there about the telephone that makes you shake if you pick it up and try to dial?
Who have higher marks. Now this applies even if these minorities are in this country only 2 or 3 years. So I don't understand it in my mind how someone in this country that's in this country 2 or 3 years was discriminated against either, years ago or through slavery, that they should go ahead of a white who's here maybe 2 and 3 generations. Police application that would prevent them from, getting ahead on an exam if they're in this country 2, 3, 4, or 5 years.
I know a person whose 11-year-old daughter passed the test. That's how easy they've made the test.
Right, and they say nothing about the poor white that may have got a very low mark due to his social environment also. That doesn't count.
Yeah. Well, we're allowing this insanity to go on. I hope it stops soon.
The institute in there was a carbon copy of the institute that Mr. Bryant belonged to, along with Marcus Raskin, who was quite a southpaw himself. He was the darling of most of the lefties in academia, from which I retired during the war in Vietnam. He's been constantly bad-mouthing the United States. We're warmongers. His book, The Roots of War, in which the war has been preoccupied the American leaders, and another one, Global Research, the power of the multinational corporations. This man is way, just reading his titles. But
you're absolutely right, Marty. Absolutely right. And if we were to listen to the likes of this individual, we would actually be, the logical conclusion is unilateral disarmament. And I agree with you, Marty. You're a person to call and really size it up for what it is. I thank you, Marty. To a trot. To the world, he is a madman, a mystic, a religious zealot, bent on the export of terrorism. Egyptian President Anwar Sadat calls him a vicious criminal, 100% sick and possessed of the demon. Sudan's President Yafar Nimieri diagnoses him as a split personality, both evil. For 12 years, Muammar Gaddafi has ruled the mostly empty desert country with erratic petulance, a taste for action, and a simplistic blend of Islamic austerity and utopian mumbo-jumbo. Even with all of his oil money, Kaddafi will probably never achieve his ultimate quixotic goal, uniting the Arab legions under himself. But he's tried hard and in the process became one of the world's premier irritants. It goes to total dissolution and destruction of Israel and neutralizing the United States. Now, I see the President, for his first 6 months in office, gets an A+ for economic efforts. And a great obstructionist from Massachusetts, the very portly fellow with a shock of white hair and a somewhat blank look to the eye that either comes from too much cigar smoke in the back room or not enough branch water. He's obstructive. Who voted for him as president anyway? Hey, what was I doing that was so memorable?
Well, it was a little more action. The calls were more interesting, and yeah, I think you were a little bolder.
I was a little bolder.
Yeah. But I don't know what would go over today with so many factors to be considered and so many pressures.
Very incisive man. You see, it's a great hypocrisy. Everybody, with a very small percentage of exception, so I should say virtually everybody, wants excitement, wants the bolder, more vintage approach, and yet we all play the game and say, well, we don't want it. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Well,
it's an Orwellian double think.
Yeah.
So I appreciate, where you're concerned, sir, I'm suspending the 7-day rule.
Okay, Bob.
You can call every 7 minutes if you like.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, be talking to you in 7 minutes, sir. Thank you. Many things we didn't talk about, and maybe nobody cares about the baseball strike. I want to say this: if they don't go back, I would only hope and pray that come next spring, the newspapers, television stations, the radio stations would not report on summer camp. I would hope that we would write them off forever, but we won't. Don't forget, special edition. Until tomorrow, this is Bob Grant reminding you your influence counts. Use it. Get Kaddafi.